I think I find some peace in that process of defeat. And it's not defeat because if you don't quit, you don't lose. And so I just don't quit, but I'm learning. So it's like, like I'm paying to learn. And if I'm not delivering the 5-star product, something has to change. And so like, I feel like we're in this space now and we've made these changes with our CRM and some other stuff. So we have better visibility and better transparency and better surfacing of challenges. And that's been super helpful and makes me super optimistic about our future and our performance. But you're right, Dylan. The greatest thing is the wonderful, loving family situation that I have and that I've built and continuing to build and continuing to work on. And that's wildly rewarding. And that's my why.
Welcome to Unfiltered, the official podcast of propertymanagement.com. I'm your host, Dylan Scroggins, joined by my co-host, founder, El Presidente of propertymanagement.com, Matt Speer. We strive to be the most authentic conversation in property management. We'll also give you a lot of tips to build your business in whatever way you want to build it. We are joined today by the one and only Jim Miller with Performance Asset Management based out of the beautiful Wisconsin. He is one of my favorite people in PM. Always a good time. So this will be a good one. So Jim, welcome to the pod. Really appreciate you being here.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Dylan and Matt. And I'm excited to have this conversation.
So Jim, the first time we met, we talked about Wisconsin and college football for the first half hour of our conversation.
Here we go.
I knew you're a Bama hater, but give me your picks right now on Wisconsin's record and also give me the picks specifically on when they come to T-Town in September.
Okay, well, I'll do the T-Town first because that's from a Andrew fan standpoint, I've accepted the L. And so like when I sat down with the schedule about 3 weeks ago. There's it's Fickrell's third year, new offensive system in Madison, and they're going to go back to some of the good old fashioned run it down your throat Wisconsin football because we grown big in Wisconsin. And so we got to play to our strengths. But with that being said, there's been, Madison, we've been transitioning, we kept picking the fruit off the Barry Alvarez tree, and it served us really well for 30 years and then not so much. And, they were going to go with some of that, the red gun offense originally when Fickrell took over, and now they're transitioning back to more, we'll see what they show up with because it starts 9 to 8. But
just some more Jonathan Taylor style running. See,
we're really happy. Ron Dean, Ron Dean, Jonathan Taylor. I mean, there's Brent Moss. There's a long list.
There's a history there.
Yeah.
Also, I just want to say, officially, I'm just happy to be in the conversation as an Indiana football fan. I'm just happy to be here. And, playoffs last year, I don't have that expectation, but we'll see.
Yeah, I think that's a little disrespectful because we're in the Big Ten, so I have a bigger bone to pick with Matt than I do with you, Dylan.
Yeah.
Because Indiana was like, we wiped our feet on them for 20 years, and now they're thumping us. And like, I got that on the calendar as an L too. I think we're still trying to figure out our payroll, and we're hoping to catch up with Hoosier Land,
I mean this as a compliment. This is like the best compliment I think I could give you, or maybe it'll be an insult. I don't know. But has anyone ever told you look like Nick Saban?
I get that all the time.
I'm literally just thinking
You're the second person that said that to me. Somebody came up to me at the gym and they said that to me, and I was like, "Is this a trick?"
I think being like Nick Saban impersonator. You got the look. So I mean, like great.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Compliment.
I like Saban. I actually, and don't get me wrong, the Indiana Saban thing was one of the funniest things that I've heard in the last year. Like that was
Alabama Jones.
There it is. Alabama Jones. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was just so perfect. And it was such a great line, but I like Saban. I like Saban's thoughts on character development. I like Saban's thoughts on doing hard things. And then also, he's got a lot of trophies. So I appreciate that comparison.
I think Nick Saban, Dylan, I don't know, tell me if you disagree, but I think he'd be a great property management operator.
Yeah, I agree. The process, man. All
Yeah.
right, so from this point forward, we're calling Jim Miller the Nick Saban of property management. That's
I
official
do.
breaking news.
And that makes sense. And it fits also because I won the Cub Scout candy selling championship 3 years in a row. 2 of those years, I doubled the school record. The third year, I couldn't because it was my record. And I was just too good to beat myself too many times. But 3 of those bad boys, as I remind my older brother and his kids of 3 or 4 times a year with loving text messages. So yeah, it makes sense. It's a good fit.
That's awesome. Well, I can't wait for these show notes. We need to change your LinkedIn profile with all these new headers we got. So, well, it's awesome. Well, I digress to property management, but in all seriousness, would love to hear, nobody grows up wanting to be in property management when they're like in middle and high school and selling candy to their friends. But tell us, like, how did you get started in this wild world of property management? And yeah, just give us a quick overview before we start diving into what you're doing today.
Yeah. So I got into real estate in like 2003. And by 2005, I thought I was the greatest real estate operator in the world. Not the PM space, but I was selling contracts, and then I was fixing and flipping. And then as that money really started to pour in, and that was really my first exposure to making, really good money, I started buying more and more real estate. The challenge is that I was flipping like 75 houses a year, and I was in my 30s, and, I got caught holding with a bunch of stuff financed with buy, fix, and sell money. So I got pummeled because that money's a lot more expensive than, long-term money. And I had a mentor and a coach, and, everything was frozen, and I was just kind of staring at the floor, trying to figure out how I was going to survive. And he was like, you should go into property management. And I was like, I hate property management. I hate property managers. And he's like, yeah. And he's like, you'd be really good at it and you should go into it. And I was like, how do you expect me to go from making, $5,000 to $50,000 a deal to making $50 a month or whatever 8% was in 2009 money? And so I did it. I didn't really have a choice. There wasn't anything else to do. There wasn't anything going on in real estate. I've always kind of been an entrepreneur. Go back to that early Cub Scout candy success, and I got it. Like, and before the Cub Scout candy, it was like Kool-Aid stands and then paper routes. And so I've always liked to, search for my own nickels. And so I begrudgingly, this guy was a mentor, and he was my best friend. He was just a really brilliant dude, and he really understood how to operate. And he kind of thought that, I think he thought he would enjoy watching me be tortured with the minutia of operating in property management, because I was like, sign the contract, the deal's over, let's go celebrate and then go hunt more deals. And that was just kind of how I was wired.
And did you start it, like how many doors when you're like, all right, I'm doing this, let's go. Did you have some doors kind of out of the gate from just your past investing, or what was kind of starting point, and then how did it play out?
So my deal with him was, he said, I'll give you the first 10. You do a good job for 90 days and I'll bring you the next 100. And so he owned the first 10, and then he used his network for the next 100. And I'm a GameFi person, and I still at that time I was doing some preservation stuff around the foreclosure crisis, but then the banks started to narrow what they would pay. And so that deal started to suck. And then I saw the light in property management. And one of my big whys in life was I wanted to be able to provide opportunities in all facets of life for my son. And I was an orphan growing up. And so it was really important to me. And that was a huge part of my why, was to give him the stuff that I didn't have as a kid. And so then once I got those 100 doors, I had figured out very quickly how to net $10,000 a month. And at that time I was like, cool, this will take care of whatever his educational needs are. This is awesome. Let's keep going. And so I just went from there. And then all those numbers got bigger and better, as well as, so did he's in his first year of grad school. for PsyD. And so the tuition bills got bigger and bigger too, but I've been able to live that dream that I had when he was born, that I'd be able to provide him with opportunities that would, hopefully allow him for a greater level of freedom and fulfillment in life.
That's awesome. No, I appreciate you sharing that, Jim. And, we don't talk about the why enough in this industry for any small business owners in general. So appreciate you sharing that. And, we have a wide range of folks that'll be listening to this, people who are established, 1,000, 2,000 doors plus, and maybe someone just getting started. What is your message to someone getting pummeled right now and think maybe sub 1,000 doors wants to hit that next growth level, even sub 500, maybe at 50 doors? Like, what is your message to someone right now who's just getting their teeth kicked in, maybe in the car right now, listening to this podcast?
Welcome to the club. I'm getting my teeth kicked in 2025 myself, and embrace it. Get close to it. Don't run from it. Understand it, learn from it, because if, for me, if I have I genuinely, 2025 is our worst financial year in the last 8 years for PAM. And, we can talk more about that. And there's good reasons for it. We got really good at keeping residents. We got really good at doing lease renewals. And so, as we were on that pathway, I didn't understand what the impact of getting good at that would be on construction revenue and on placement revenue and all that fun stuff, late fees, application fees. So, learn from the challenges. Don't beat yourself up. Don't waste your time beating anybody else up. Hunt the solutions, because there are all these great marketplaces out there. Be vulnerable, be courageous in your vulnerability, and be like, hey, I suck at this, or I suck at that, or, you don't even have to personalize it on that deep of a level. My math in construction sucks. Why? Whose math doesn't suck? Why? And because I think that's one of the, shiny balls that we can get caught chasing in the street, is like, I can look at somebody else's math, or I can look at somebody that has more doors than I have and think, oh boy, I want these things. But if I stay with my math on a monthly basis, and my team and myself, we get better a little bit every day, all that math stuff takes care of itself. All that getting kicked in the teeth stuff takes care of itself. And it builds the character, in my opinion, that you need to become whatever the best version of yourself is.
And Jim, what's your
that saving coming out right there? Sometimes you got to run the ball.
You sure do.
On the damn ball, yeah. What's your door count now, Jim? If you don't mind sharing with everyone.
590. I was at 700, over 700 in January. We terminated with a big client, and then we got terminated by a bunch of clients that I didn't want to get terminated by. And so then that led to some personnel changes on the team, and it led to me taking a more active role in the business than I've had. Like I had mentioned, and we had a great 8-year run. I was really more of a lifestyle operator for those 8 years, where I was getting paid to, get my physical health in order, invest time and money into my emotional health and learning about that process, and then becoming, semi-competitive pickleball player and other hobbies like that, right? Where I just got to put a bunch of time. My son started his college journey like 2018-ish, and a preferred walk-on at Madison, and then repeated injuries, and now he's going to be a psychologist. So it's a beautiful journey for him, and I got to experience that. He got to go do an undergrad semester abroad, and so I went over and hung out with him for like a month of that, and that was pretty cool. And so I just got to do a bunch of that stuff, and then we got to a place where 2025, and I'm more engaged now. But yeah, the door count went down, and doesn't faze me. I'm making less money, but I'm still profitable. And if you stay in the game and you learn about yourself, I just think that that's like a limitless learning loop, as opposed to chasing other people or chasing things outside of myself. And I'm pretty confident about what the future holds for us at PAM as we're doing all this technology transition. And then we're also kind of transitioning how we show up in the space.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, Jim, though, myself and Matt, dads of young kids, definitely in the grind. Actually, both of us have pregnant wives. Hope, Matt, you're okay with me announcing that to the universe.
Yeah.
With the fact that your college son wants to spend a month with his dad abroad, that is the big takeaway for me on this podcast. Like, that is a life goal, and you've reached a pinnacle of success that few have. And I'm being dead serious. Like, the fact that he wants to spend time with you and what he's doing, even going into a career to help people, man, that's awesome. Like, I get goosebumps thinking about that. And oh man, having your son invite you for a month, that's incredible.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And it is, but he's been my big why, and for me, it's just been wildly rewarding. Like it going from 700 to 590, who cares? As far as like the general scheme of things, because honestly, like I've gone to 700 3 times and gotten beaten back down by our own operational failure 3 times. And the biggest thing for me is like, I guess I think I find some peace in that process of defeat. And it's not defeat, because if you don't quit, you don't lose. And so I just don't quit, but I'm learning. So it's like, like I'm paying to learn. And if I'm not delivering the 5-star product, something has to change. And so like, I feel like we're in this space now, and we've made these changes with our CRM and some other stuff. So we have better visibility and better transparency and better surfacing the challenges. And that's been super helpful and makes me super optimistic about our future and our performance. But you're right, Dylan. The greatest thing is, that the wonderful, loving family situation that I have and that I've built and continuing to build and continuing to work on. And that's wildly rewarding. And that's my why.
You mentioned, that's awesome. You mentioned a couple of times the technology updates, and you kind of got up to door count, and you're kind of fighting that battle. What are some of these updates you're making to your systems or tech stack? Talk us through some of that.
Yeah. So we tried and failed multiple times with different CRM players in the PM space, number one. Number two, we then enter into this idea of AI, and we enter into this, we're in this cloud computing, and there's all these different technological changes in the last 10 years, trying to figure out where I want to invest money. And I'm a little bit of a contrarian and skeptic when it comes to a lot of that stuff, because I really do feel that, if there's something about the business that I have to change, it's probably inside of me as opposed to the stuff on the outside. But I went outside of the PM space after failing like 4 times with just, quote unquote solutions in the PM space for the CRMs, because I need that visibility. If I have something that is out of workflow compliance or out of automation compliance, I need to be able to see that stuff, or my director of operation needs to be able to see that stuff daily, a couple times a day, because that's where the problem solving takes place. There's like that old expression about, if you got one in the hall, there's 12 in the walls. And so I like to have those walls opened up, because those 12 end up as, negative reviews. They end up being a time suck for the team. You shit on, clients and customers, and you drop the ball on performance. And it just doesn't work for me. Like I want to be able to be a 5-star experience factory for residents and investors. And that's, what our primary goal is at PAM. And what does that look like? So we went to HubSpot. Well, we went to Rentvine. We migrated from Propertyware to Rentvine because we wanted that completely open API, because that was going to be paramount to being successful using a CRM. We weren't going to be able to have success with the CRM without a completely open, strong API. And so then,
sorry to cut you off, but Jim, don't get me started with data, because I couldn't agree more with the API and what Rentvine's doing there.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and I love Propertyware. Propertyware was awesome for me initially in 2012, because it was, I was the first online payment PM in the state of Wisconsin.
Wow.
And, the automation just with the accounting was such a game changer and so efficient and clean that I'll always have a lot of gratitude towards Propertyware for that. But it just is wildly limited if you don't have that open API in today's tech world.
Has that implementation played out and you're happy with it? Or
the Rentvine was the implementation of migrating from Rentvine or from Propertyware to Rentvine was absolutely off the charts incredible. Rentvine exceeded expectations at every checkpoint in the process and continues to, because they deliver just their service on a day-to-day basis is just incredible. They're responsive. They escalate issues. It's how you'd hope it would be. And so that was awesome. And then with the HubSpot transition, there's building that goes into that because you have to build all those automations, or as they call them in HubSpot, pipelines. But we have visibility into our investor pipeline and into our resident pipeline and our leasing pipeline today, 2.5 months after the transition, on levels that we've never had before.
And are you using HubSpot because I think a lot of people that might be hearing HubSpot, maybe they've heard of it, but maybe they've not used it. And I think a lot of the thought there is that, hey, that's a sales marketing tool, or are you using it for your operational processes as well?
Yeah. So we're not doing the sales and marketing stuff yet. So I turned that off in June so I could solely focus on operations. We're not going to start taking new clients until October 1st. Not even, so the sales and marketing piece we're going to do in HubSpot, but right now we're just solely focused on building our operations and our automations inside of HubSpot. Because HubSpot's API connects with Rentvine's API. And so, so to get to the place where if we make a change in HubSpot based on somebody calling in and saying something, then that automatically goes into Rentvine. Or if we make the change in Rentvine, it automatically goes into HubSpot. So we've got that information completely surfaced.
So it's pushing and pulling.
Yeah.
Hey,
yes.
I want to pause. Rentvine, if you're open to sponsoring this episode, we are people to contact your people or something out. So anyway, back to the pod.
Yeah.
Now this is unfiltered. We want people talking about. Yeah. I mean, look, we want people talking about this stuff. This is awesome. So sorry to interrupt. Keep going, Jim.
Yeah.
Well, sorry. I mean, about that, it's like the industry, Jim, we've talked about this in the past where it's like you can kind of get into the NARPM bubble. And I love NARPM. I think, they've got a great future and are continue to do really great things for the industry. But if you're only kind of in that scene, right, you're going to be a product of that scene. And if no one else is using, if HubSpot's not at the NARPM conference and you're only using tools that are vendors at the conference,
yeah.
Right. And so I'm curious how you heard about HubSpot. And then I'd love to maybe just hear a little bit more about the operational kind of the data flowing from Rentvine into HubSpot and pushing and pulling. I think that's really compelling because everyone struggles with that data issue.
Yeah. So, the first decision I made was hey, we're going to leave Propertyware. Obviously there's been a bunch of stuff that's gone on with RealPage and, they moved a bunch of their clients from Propertyware to Buildium. And then it seems like it's not really an entity that they're going to continue to invest money in and innovation in. And, we're in an era of innovation, right? There's the ground beneath our feet is moving fast. And so then as I started to get deeper into learning about AI and the different ways that I could use AI in the business, the different ways that other people were using AI in the business, I started looking at who was going to replace Propertyware. And I talked to a couple different outside vendors specifically about APIs and what their experience was with interacting with the different APIs inside of the SaaS space, which is what Propertyware would be in, and Appfolio and Buildium and Rentvine and Yardi. There's a bunch of them. And they all three of them said the same thing. They said, yeah, like all these are doing different versions of APIs, but the only person that has a truly open two-way API is Rentvine. And none of these three were related. It was all separate conversations that took place over about 60 days. So I started to test drive Rentvine, was going to make the move last fall, and then was just like, you know what, this is just a bad time for us. We were going into the holidays, and I hadn't solved the CRM piece. And I didn't want to rush that because, well, we'd fallen face first 4 times with it. And so I was like, that there's a lot of time and money and energy, because that can then become such a negative piece in our internal culture for the people that are tasked with operating that on a day-to-day basis, when it doesn't do what we were told it would do. And when there's continually like breaks and all this other stuff where operators can't operate, full stop, right? And they're already, like our culture and our energy is so important because we're interfacing with humans, and, humans have got a little more anxious, and humans have gotten a little more like, there's a greater sense of urgency. So I think that's our thing. It's like the human marketplace has changed in the fact that it's no longer like, yeah, hey, we'll be out there in 3 days to repair the oven. People have this Google, Amazon mindset. I want it now. I want it now. Whether it's an investor calling in on the phone or whether it's a resident calling in or messaging in for a work order, humans want it now. And once I really like accepted that, then it was like, okay, cool. So we have to have people, who's ever answering the phone has to be able to solve something right now. And then we also need to be able to give information to our investors in like a right now kind of format, because that's what the marketplace wants. And so I took my time with the CRMs, and I hired a technology consultant that was outside of the PM space, that looked at my overall operation, that was specialized in CRM recommendations, and then also with like, referring for different companies that would come in and build the solution the way you needed it built. And they came back to me with HubSpot and a couple other choices, and I went and test drove those and researched those, and then talked to a bunch of the clients of these 3 different platforms. And the thing about HubSpot that made them a no-brainer for me was that they had built a community of third-party contractors / vendors that would help with customizing the HubSpot solution for your business.
Mm-hmm.
And that aren't HubSpot employees, and that, there's Reddit threads on them, and there's rating systems for them. And I was like, cool, I can get, there's all these companies that say HubSpot works and HubSpot does what they say it's going to do, which is the opposite of what my experiences were in the PM space. And then I could hire the third-party people to build it.
A couple of things I'm pulling from that. So one is you brought in a third-party consultant that's not a property management consultant.
Correct.
Right? So they're looking at it from like a broad view of like what's working in other industries and, what would work for a property manager. They come back and say, hey, this HubSpot tool is going to work great with Rentvine.
Yep.
And so then you start to implement that. And I think that's a really good perspective to have, especially like you said with, because my take is like, hey, software is going to be software's got to change, like software as a service, because AI is coming on the scene and making, somebody like me who's not a, trained developer, I can build tools and solutions for like my property management business or my business. And so if you're a tool like HubSpot, where you're actually saying, no, we're going to double down on making it easy to customize the software for your business, not broadly everybody's business, that's where software can actually, cement itself and not be disrupted in the way that I'm talking about with AI. So I think that's cool. And then my question I have, and then Dylan, I'm sure you've got some follow up and kind of moving things into the, the rapid fire around here, but what it cost, if you're comfortable sharing,
yeah.
I'm sure everybody listening is like, all right, this sounds great, but like, what did Rentvine cost? What did HubSpot cost? And what did the consultant cost? Unfiltered. Yeah. So you can round it up or down if you want, but I'd love to know that.
So Rentvine costs me less than what I paid for Propertyware, and I get the open API included in that, the two-way API. So I get more functionality for less price. And the other thing is this: is like our investors absolutely love the Rentvine reporting and find it way better than anything else they've experienced, which is a huge win for PAM. And so it was, and the cool thing was like Rentvine was really good. So like there's a data migration bill that we had to pay. So they waived a bunch of our months of the monthly fee up front to offset what that was going to cost us, because it's a third party data migration company that you hired to migrate that data, which was really generous of them and really cool of them. And so, yeah, so we're paying a little, we're paying less than what we paid monthly at Propertyware for Rentvine. And then what those migration costs were, they paid for that by discounting and giving us a bunch of months for free. So I'm saving money with the move to Rentvine. HubSpot costs us right now like $1,500 a month for the number of seats that we have. And I think that's going to go up by I think we're going to end up at like $2,000 a month once we bring in the sales and marketing piece. But that's going to eliminate some of the other, we're going to have our website is going to go to HubSpot and stuff like that. So we're going to be able to consolidate that. And then we were using Meld. We stopped using Meld. We're building some stuff in HubSpot that with Rentvine that we think is going to help us to outperform what we were doing with Meld. And so, but we'll end up in about $2,000 a month in HubSpot cost. Then for the third party, the first one we hired didn't work out for us. That cost us $6,000. The second one we hired, we're paying $5,000 a month, and it's incredible because this company, how it works is we have one call a week with them, and then our instructor is available to my entire team all week via email and phone to help problem solve stuff. And essentially what they do is they say, what do you want? And then they build a curriculum, they reverse engineer that and build a curriculum. And then they're teaching our team how to build these pipelines and how to use HubSpot. So we're getting the technical expertise, we're getting the videos from this, we're getting all of it. So we're getting empowered with the knowledge to succeed in that space.
Or teach a man how to fish, that with 5,000 teams getting trained up on the system that's really dynamic and flexible once they're comfortable with it.
Yeah. Yeah. And so in that, the second consultant, it's Impact is the name of that company, and they're absolutely phenomenal. I've talked to other people that have used HubSpot and have gone different directions and with it, where they've paid to have people build everything for them, and their bills are a lot bigger than mine. But, for me, the Impact model just made a lot of sense because our people, we would have that training then, we could keep that, we can store that in the GPTs that we're building for our internal operations. And it's been a great investment.
Yeah. I was at IMN on Austin last weekend. I heard it 3 or 4 times people talking about HubSpot, but I talked to somebody that was 6,000 door operator that was really they're about to pull the trigger on going from Lead Simple to HubSpot. And so you're at, 600 doors. So it sounds like that's the type of system that can really scale, especially how you're thinking about it. Because it's not $2,000 might sound expensive to some people, but when you think about it, you've got everything in one place. You've got website, you're managing your maintenance tickets. It's not just apples to apples. Oh, it's just workflow. It does a lot more than that. And yeah, I think HubSpot's going to potentially kind of take off and maybe build some steam in our space and completely organically, because I've not seen one piece of marketing from HubSpot that's been related to our industry. So really cool to hear.
Yeah, right on. Yeah, and I'm wildly optimistic.
Love that. Well, that's a great segue to land the plane and do a bit of a lightning round. So Jim, we typically ask people what's their favorite app or tool they're using right now that's not PM specific. because it fits the theme of what we've been talking about. Is that there's a lot of tools that work great in PM that might not be branded for this space. So we've talked about HubSpot, they owe you a free t-shirt, but is there anything besides HubSpot that you're using right now that gets you excited that you want other people to use, and preferably not a PM specific tool?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just kind of consumed by HubSpot right now because it's an enterprise tool, and just it's limitless in what the opportunities are for building automations. And I think that, to become that 6,000 door provider, being able to build those kinds of automations organically is a key part to that pathway.
Awesome. So this episode is officially sponsored by HubSpot and Rentvine. Please use discount code Badger to get your opportunity. There's nothing there. Don't click that. All right, cool. So what is a book or podcast that you recommend to any PM leader right now?
I like Peter Lohman's podcasts. I also like his Lazy Leverage podcast that he does with John Matstar. I think the thing I like about Peter Lohman's podcast and about the Lazy Leverage podcast is that they're a great filter. There's a lot of stuff that they do that I'll never do and I don't want to do. I think Peter was an engineer by trade, and, I was a Cub Scout candy sales champion by trade. But I respect and admire his attention to detail and his willingness to bring in and consider new ideas and different ideas. And I like how he kicks those around, and I like how he and Matsner kicks those around. I think that probably the best podcast that I listened to, Peter and Wolf did one on phones, and I felt all that pain, and I don't feel as much of that pain anymore with the transition that I've made. But I certainly understood it, and I appreciated their perspective on it, Yeah. And I think then just with saying that, the one thing I'd say is I'm also a bit of a skeptic about influencer money. It reminds me a little bit of infomercials from back in the day when they had a dedicated channel, and I'd never been a purchaser of stuff from the QVC or whatever it is, but I think that that's just an asterisk, because I think both those guys catch some influencer cash, and I'm not mad at them, but it'd be difficult to, if you were taking cash, come out and say that hey, this sucks. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I love both those guys. That podcast is awesome. I followed Peter 4 or 5 years ago, and he is good about saying if he is an investor in a business. Shout out Peter. I did 4 searches for Peter. He's awesome. And then with Master, I actually hired an assistant through Sagan Passport. I know they're doing a lot more work in the property management space. So yeah, it's awesome. Yeah, I've enjoyed that podcast. There's been a couple of tech tools that they've recommended that I've just immediately downloaded. Whisperflow being one of them. That's totally changed the business. So massive fan of Lazy Leverage. And John would crack up if he heard you say he's an influencer, because he's so anti-influencer. That's hilarious.
I know. He's getting paid. I'm not, so I'm just taking a little bit of a shot. But no, I've used their white glove. I'm a member of Crane, and I've used the white glove through Sagan, and awesome. It's been a great experience, and it's definitely been a white glove experience. They live up to what they sell, and so I appreciate.
Oh yeah. 100%. Well, we use Sagan to find a marketing manager for propertymanager.com. So
shout out to Femi, Olafemi, man. He's
gonna edit this video. Yeah.
He probably will.
All right, we're gonna get a discount code. No, I'm just kidding. Everybody's a user on this.
Well, why don't we get paid? Are we the worst business people ever? We're just, what's going on?
Yeah.
They're all getting paid. I don't get paid. What's going on?
Your character's invaluable.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Last question here. One word to describe the future of PM.
Transparency.
Tell us more. I mean, the word's transparency.
Number one, the residents and investors, they want everything in real time. That's a transparency issue. Number two, we're entering into this world of asset management. And so if you go, and obviously you'd want to go and you'd want to look at the financial industry, because that is an asset management industry. And you would want to look at, how they report their expenses, whether it's an upfront expense or whether it's the internal transaction expenses. But all of that stuff is disclosed somewhere. Sometimes it's hidden in a 180-page document, and you have to search through it to find the one sentence. But thankfully, there's new tech called ChatGPT that'll help with that. but so they're transparent, and they're transparent about their performance as well. And I think that, if you're going to be an asset manager, you got to be willing to put your scorecard out front and be honest about it and be public about it and have it verified by some kind of third-party system, because anybody can self-report that they're returning 27% on investments, or they have a 99% occupancy rate, and they, haven't had an eviction in 17 years. And anybody can type that, use their Twitter fingers and type that in and put that up someplace. But they have some sort of authentic, uncorruptible third-party validation system is going to drive that transparency, and it's going to drive the development of who succeeds in the asset management space, because people are going to hire asset managers based on their scorecards and their actual authenticated performance.
Bingo. Love it.
Well,
Awesome.
I hope you're right, because if you're right, we're right, and that all works out well. So,
Everybody's
but yeah,
right.
transparency, just regardless, I think is becoming more and more important.
Love it. Well, hey, Jim, thanks again for joining us. Hope you hit the pickleball course this afternoon when you're not working on your API stuff. Matt, any closing thoughts?
No, this was great. This is fun. We have, Nick Saban, the legend, on the call here. The Nick Saban of property management.
We
got that LinkedIn updated. Yeah.
Discount codes, potential sponsors. Jim, thanks so much. Go Badgers. Roll Tide. No one cares about Indiana.
Hoosiers.
Thank you.
I'm just kidding, Matt. All right. Thanks, Jim.
Thanks, gentlemen. Have a great day.